Okay, so as usual, we have some interesting things going on today. Before I get into that, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. So, big story I got is yesterday protests at homeless encampment throw rocks, bottles, and smoke bombs at Los Angeles police. So, and I know this is just, you know, usual Antifa bullshit, but it's it's a sign of things to come. But so police in LA were attacked by protester rioters Wednesday when police attempted to close a homeless encampment. So I guess what the this Echo Park in LA has essentially been taken over. It's the tent city. Activists and homeless people refused to move, began throwing objects at the officers. They closed in. Unlawful assemblies were declared. At 11:45, officers were still at the encampment and a fence was installed to keep new protesters out. The homeless already in the encampment were permitted to stay overnight. Homeless service providers were dispatched to the area to help the homeless find shelter after the clash. Now, I think they probably handled that pretty good. They're bringing in people. They're not just. I mean, what are they going to do? They're going to kick them out, and then what? They're all going to go somewhere else. But you know, if they're actually working with them to get them into some kind of homeless shelter, great. You know, that's what they need to do. LA is the city with the second highest rate of people experiencing homelessness based on a 2020 report. But I highlight that because things, the homeless situation is, it's going to be, well, I'll just read this. Millions of tenants could get evicted again in 7 days. This article was written yesterday, so 6 days. But Biden may extend the moratorium, the eviction moratorium, through at least July. So he's just, you know, if he does that, I mean, it's not a solution. Okay, you're just you're just moving the goalposts. What are you gonna do? You're just gonna for the next 4 years, you're just gonna say, oh no, nobody can be evicted. Eventually, it's gonna come down and it's gonna be bad. The current moratorium is set to expire in a week, and Americans are still struggling to pay rent. Many Americans have not yet received needed stimulus aid due to implementation delays. Look, if you're 6 months behind on your rent, $1,400 isn't going to save you. I'm sorry, it's not. This is. So the federal eviction moratorium Biden extended on his first day in office is set to expire in 7 days. But I don't know, why would he, if he's going to extend it, why would he wait till like the last minute? You know? According to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, 1 in 5 renters is behind on rent, and over 10 million Americans have fallen behind on mortgage payments since COVID began. So the Biden administration is considering extending moratorium eviction through at least July to buy more time for stimulus aid to be distributed. It is also considering minor policy changes to the moratorium, like implementing an education campaign to inform renters that the policy exists, along with taking a greater role in enforcing the moratorium against landlords who do not oblige. Now, the big problem with more this eviction moratorium is if you try to evict people, you get fined. You know that there's like big fines and everything else. So they still, it's crazy. Honestly, I don't know what you do if you're. There's no easy solution to this, but millions of people are going to be evicted at some point. I mean, if you move it back, it's just going to get worse, right? So, you know, people really have to start getting ready for this because I think the what is it the current homeless population's at like 500,000. Did you and that's like considered record high for the U.S. for us? Could you imagine if it was in the millions just overnight? It would it'd be a it'd be a disaster. And with the price of everything going up, food, gas, so you get evicted, then you you get evicted, you can't afford gas in your car, you can't afford food. Think that people think this is bad. Wait till people can't eat. It's it's gonna get ugly. But on some other news, 77% of Americans are concerned about inflation. Good. I don't know who the other 33% are, but so let's see. We got 77% of Americans concerned about inflation negatively affecting the economy, according to a survey conducted by Civic Science, a data firm, and obtained Thursday by Axios. 42% reported they were very concerned, while only 17% were not at all concerned, with 17% millionaires and shit. I mean, so it's coming. It's say economic confidence in U.S. has been improving as vaccine distribution ramps up. Gallup Gallup's economic confidence index ticked up by 8 points in February, and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen recently predicted the U.S. could return to full employment by 2022. I'm sorry, I don't see that happening. It's the numbers don't reflect that. Say inflation is driven by expectation, according to Axios, and it occurs when people expect prices to rise, so they demand higher pay and raise the cost of goods and services. Growing concern over inflation comes despite the fact that Congress has not raised the federal minimum wage to 50 an hour. I mean, if they if inflation is coming because they've been printing money like crazy. I mean, the fact It's it has I mean it has nothing to do with the federal minimum wage. They haven't raised it. So separate survey conducted by Bank of America found that 93% of investors expect inflation to rise within the next year. I mean, that's a great. It's already rising. We've seen it. Literally, we have already seen it happen. So I don't know what the purpose of that survey is. I mean, it's stupid. But in other news, top Republicans seem open to some kind of gun control. I keep saying this. Republicans are spineless. Mitch McConnell is spineless. The dude's a snake. Lindsey Graham is a snake. I don't care. They're they're terrible. Okay? They don't represent anybody but themselves. I'm sorry, they don't. And I would never put my hopes into Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham to ever do the right thing. Just it's not going to happen. And that brings me to this. You know, Biden wants police to enter your home and take your guns without a warrant. This is something that, people are talking about. But like Iraq veteran says, but I seriously doubt he's had the conversation with people who would carry out such orders, or he'd know that option is off the table. False. Okay, you cannot trust the police to do the right thing. How many times have we seen in the past year the police just completely trample over anybody's rights? They do not care. They do not care. You know? And people could say, "Oh, it's in the cities, it's everywhere." You know? I mean, you've seen it from everywhere, from even down to places like some of the behaviors of the cops have just been disgusting, right? We've seen in Portland where the police were guarding a dumpster, preventing people from taking the food out of the dumpster. You know, like, dude, if people are that desperate for food, and the police are like literally like, no, you cannot eat this dumpster food. You know, it's it's disgusting. How many times have we seen cops all over the place just completely step on everybody's rights? They do not care. They are not on your side. They will do what they are told. There may be some might quit, but the vast majority are just there for a paycheck. And that's just how it is. So, again, relating to some of this stuff, Biden signals he could support killing the filibuster entirely to pass his agenda. He, Today, Biden said he might support a full revocation of the Senate filibuster should the chamber not reinstate a talking filibuster as he has previously suggested. He said, "I strongly support moving in that direction." So, I mean, they're gonna try. They're definitely gonna try to do this. right? And then they will do whatever they want. Unity be damned. They're going to push as hard as they can. I mentioned it before. Joe Biden had that meeting with historians where it was he asked how far can he basically asked how far can I push people before they snap? You know, what how much is too much? How fast is too fast? This guy is he is going to try hard to pass his agenda. With all the new gun owners out there and all this stuff that's looming, the inflation, the eviction moratorium coming to an end soon. All this stuff. It's things are gonna get crazy. You know, while I was talking about that, I had to bring this up because I this is pretty funny. Biden spotted with a parent cheat sheet at first solo press conference. The dude literally couldn't handle. So he's got a list here of people, and you can't really tell by this picture, but it appears that it's he's got some numbers written down. People that are going to, I'm assuming it's people that are going to ask him questions. Notice how he didn't take any questions from anybody, any conservative news outlets whatsoever. He had his little approved list of people that could ask him questions, and that was it. And I'm sure he had all the questions written down on another thing. But in other news, game industry petitions to ban upcoming video games 6 days in Fallujah for war crimes and threat of mass shooters. Mass shooters? Really? Why are they? I don't understand. You know, when are they going to learn? They can't blame video games for the actions of people. It's just coming up, and this is something that goes back years. You know, and it's not something just on Democrats. Republicans used to be the same way. They would want to ban games like Grand Theft Auto, and they would people would they would always blame video games for things that happened, and now it's the same. We're hearing the same thing again. I watched the trailer for this video game. It's I think it's interesting because it's at this point now it's historic. You know, I mean, Fallujah, that was 20 years ago. This is just it's an interesting way to preserve history. I think that's my personal take on it. It blows me away when they took when they started changing like video games to be like like the most recent Battlefield game, right? It's supposed to be a World War II game, and you had just the most ridiculous things. You had, you know, it's like women with blue hair fighting for the British, and in World War II, come on, with prosthetic arms and legs and everything else. It's like, no, that that's you're There are people that will get their kids that will get their history from video games. It used to be that video games were, you know, they tried to strive for realism, especially when it came to like war games. When it came to World War II and all these other games. You know, they used to try to strive for realism, and now it's not like that anymore. So to see this particular game come out, I thought that was good. I think it's good. I hope it comes out because they got they yeah they killed this game back in 2009, and now it's back. But what can you do? I'll just I hope that they won't cave to this cancel culture because everybody knows that you're not going to play this video game and be like, oh, I need to go kill a bunch of people. Like, normal people don't think that way. They just don't. And that's if it's it's a stupid idea to even try to make that comparison. But in other news, George Bush recently came out and said that populism was going to fritter away. And I I don't really care for how they frame this article, but so last week George Bush said he's not worried about the current moment in American politics because these populist movements begin to fritter over time. Mm, I don't think it's not that they fritter over time. It's that there's nothing you can do right now, right? People are just going to come back. They're going to come back when the next election. People are going to be mad. We're going to see I don't know exactly what's going to happen in the next 4 years. None of it's going to be good though. So he goes on to say, I don't know Bush well personally, but I served in his administration for 8 years as a senior staffer to Vice President Dick Cheney. I was in numerous meetings with Bush each week. While I did not agree with the president, every policy issue, I did leave my service with the feeling that, agree with him or not, Bush is a good person who cares a lot about our country. I know there's a lot of history with Bush, and I would disagree that that on the statement he is a good person that cares a lot about our country. But I'm gonna leave. I'm not gonna get too far into that. It goes on to say that the country is going through profound changes and political difficulties, to say the least. Populist sentiments started way back with the Tea Party movement on the right in 2009 and the Occupy Wall Street movement on the left in 2011. You could even argue that the first signs surfaced with the Ross Perot presidential candidacy in '92. These The populist movement has been building for many years and it shows little sign of slowing down. The majority of voters on the Republican side are Trump populists, and all the energy in current Democrat politics is with the socialist wing led by Bernie Sanders and AOC. Okay, but Bernie sold out. AOC is she doesn't do anything. She's all about her career, and that's just the truth. When pushed about some of these far left policies that she ran on, she said, "Oh, this isn't the time." So she's just another part. She's just another part of the machine. At the end of the day, so I don't take her seriously. Bernie Sanders, he caved. It's hilarious now. He came out and was like, "Oh, banning Trump was bad." Well, no shit. You should have. It was a few months ago. There, he was like, "Oh, we gotta get rid of this guy." He's. But you know, too little, too late, Bernie. I said that yesterday, and I'll say it again. Populism is, of course, less of a political ideology than it is a sign people are unhappy with American leadership. The approval and trust levels for elected leaders and leading institutions have been in free fall for years. Yeah, that's on the left and on the right. There is a growing belief that society's riches are flowing too heavily to a privileged and well connected few, not enough to the average American on the left. There is a strong desire to redistribute more wealth through huge tax changes on the right. The focus is on issues such as immigration, trade, and globalization. I don't know. If you are an American leader during this time of unrest, you have a couple options to choose from. First, think deeply about why people are upset and whether our system could use any fundamental reforms. Second, if you conclude things are fine without reforms, work as hard as possible to convince people why things are okay and or how change could make things worse. They really, they do need to think about why people are upset. Something, they say work as hard as possible to convince people why things are okay and how change could make things worse. It's the whole thing is broken. Something has to change. It has to change. You know, if the whole thing is falling apart and you just want to keep going down the same road. I don't know. It's the best historic example of constructive populism may be when anti-tax populist sentiments rose in Boston in the late 1700s. Enlightened and engaged leaders were able to harness the populist energy towards positive outcomes. The Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the formation of the country we now love. In the worst case scenario, leaders can ignore the warning signs and hope things just fritter away. That's the scenario we are in, unfortunately. Populism can definitely turn ugly, and we have seen some of that already, and historically, ignoring the concerns of regular people led to almost 100 years of repressive communist rule in Russia and the development of a Nazi state in Germany that didn't end until millions were killed in a world war. You know, there it is. They will continue to ignore because they don't want to lose their power. But you know, and it's true. If you study the Russian Revolution, what led up to the communists coming into power, might be interested to learn that there's some parallels between then and now. Our leaders aren't ignoring all of today's warnings because they are bad people. They do it because our society has become so segregated that people who are thriving are surrounded almost exclusively by others who are also thriving. This segregation facilitates worldviews that can grow detached from reality. I think no. I think that a lot of I think a lot of our leaders are bad people. They don't care, you know. I mean, you look at Nancy Pelosi, her district. You got, you know, her district. They've got poop patrol, because there's so many homeless people and there's nowhere for them to go to the bathroom, so people are just shitting on the streets. It's it's that bad. New York is New York is in the toilet. LA is in the toilet. I mean, you see what's happening there. It's There's so many homeless people now. It's insane. I think that things are going to get really ugly, and it's going to happen really fast because if they don't do it, if they don't extend the eviction moratorium, it's people are going to snap, you know, and then they want to try to take away people's guns, and you know, uh, people are going to snap. But yeah, I guess just get ready. I'm gonna leave it there.